Hey everybody, today we are debating whether or not faith in God is reasonable, and we're starting right now. Ladies and gentlemen, thrilled to have you here, stoked to have you. This is going to be a blast. We have two gentlemen here, debaters who have debated before, who are going to clash, as I think this is the first time. I know we've done Does God Exist? This is technically a little bit nuanced, a little bit different. And I would say we've had Tom on for a lot of stuff. Man, Tom has debated like all sorts of crazy topics on here. But this is like, you could say, Tom's forte. And so we have TJump on debating his own forte that you'll see regularly at his own channel, which, by the way, is linked in the description. And Caleb is also linked in the description. He's also gone by the names of Dry Apologist and The Lethal Weapon. I made that last one up. But he's linked down in the description below. And I can say I've enjoyed these gentlemen a lot. Glad to have them back on. I am pumped to have you here. Thanks for being here, everybody. So if this is your first time here, I want to let you know, consider hitting that subscribe button, as we have regular debates on religion, politics, and science. And so if you want some reminders on when those come up, feel free to hit that sub button. And we're going to jump right into it today. So this is live, open discussion. Gentlemen, I'm not going to take long. I'm going to basically just let you, Caleb, given that you're taking the affirmative in tonight's debate, we'll kind of let you get the ball rolling in the conversation. This is not a statement, and by that I mean, like, you can kind of just give your case, like, broadly speaking, and then from that, Tom, you can kind of pick it up. You know, you can just say, hey, Caleb, all right, cool, are you ready to roll? And then you can, Tom, just transition smoothly into your conversation from there. So, Caleb, the floor is yours. Thanks for being here, man.
Thanks for having me. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm going to have to hold this mic up. But, okay, so my position is that faith in God is reasonable because I'm going to define faith, first of all, as trust in the most reasonable position based on the most reasonable evidence and logic that we have access to. And that I do think the argument from contingency, when properly formed, does logically conclude that God exists. I know that Tom has some affinities for this argument, but I know that we differ on, I'll call the second stage of the argument. So I'll just go from there.
Okay.
I think I might hear just a slight bit of feedback in case any of you happens to have your computer unmuted still. In other words, if you're able to hit mute on any audio you might have.
Okay. Does you hear it through mine at all?
I think it went away. We are all set, so rad. Thanks, guys. And Dry Apologist. Go ahead, Tom.
You said it's reasonable to believe in God because of the contingency argument. That's your position?
Yes.
Okay, so if we have a box and let's suppose the box weighs 2 pounds, is it reasonable to believe there is a leprechaun in the box?
No.
Why not?
Because there could be other items in the box, but with the contingency argument, at least I'm maintaining that it logically, deductively follows that you get a necessary reality that has the attributes of God.
Okay, how so? Because I can say the contingency argument essentially says all contingent things began to exist, so there must be some necessary thing, and I can grant that and say, yes, there is a necessary thing, but that necessary thing doesn't need to be a God. It can be like a naturalistic pantheism, just an eternal, all-powerful nature. Oh. So why would that need to be a God?
So things that begin to exist are contingent, but also things that could cease to exist. So even if like something has always existed, it could still be contingent because it could cease to exist. But also, I'm going to argue that limitations are contingent. So anything with limitations is a contingent thing. So the necessary reality can't have limitations. And once you grant that an unlimited reality, the divine attributes then flow from there.
Can God lie?
What was that?
Can God lie? Can he lie?
No, he can't lie, but I'm finding that that's an action, and I'm talking about limitations and properties.
I don't understand the difference because that's a limitation. He can't do something, so he's limited.
Yeah, he's limited in his actions. Like he also can't ride a bicycle because he's a spaceless, timeless being. But that's a limitation in action and not a limitation in a property.
You're going to need to define the difference between the two, because as far as I can tell, that's a limitation.
Sure, yeah. God is limited by his actions, and action's something that you do, while a property is a feature that you have, regardless of whether you're doing anything or not.
Okay, so is God fuzzy, like made of fur?
No, but fuzziness is itself a property that entails limitations. So if you strip away all the limitations, whatever is left that is without limitations, God has that property.
God is limited because he's not fuzzy.
Well, fuzziness is itself an example of a limitation.
Well, it doesn't matter. The fact that it is, it can still be, if he doesn't have it, he's still limited and that he doesn't have that limitation. Just calling it a limitation doesn't solve the problem.
Well, it does, because fuzziness is a limitation in and of itself.
No.
No. I'm saying, okay, so what do you think is not limited about fuzziness?
Because fuzziness isn't a negation. It's a positive attribute. It's an attribute of something, so it can't be a limitation.
So whatever is positive about the fuzziness, I'm going to maintain God has that. Whatever is limited, he doesn't. Now that might lead to something that we can't quite grasp, but all the positive attributes of fuzziness, I'm going to say, are found in God, and all the privations are not.
Okay, I can just say the same thing about naturalistic pantheism. It has all the positive attributes of fuzziness without any of the limitations.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure, but then naturalistic pantheism is going to end up entailing all the attributes that God has, and then we're just using different words. You're going to call it naturalistic pantheism. I'm going to call it God. Really, what I'm going to call it is the unlimited necessary reality.
Right. So naturalistic pantheism is an eternal, all-powerful nature with no consciousness. So it can't be God by your definition because it doesn't have consciousness.
Right. That reality would not be God because it doesn't have consciousness. However, not having consciousness is a limitation. So naturalistic pantheism can't be the necessary reality, at least according to this logic.
Nope, that's completely made up and arbitrary. There's no reason to think that consciousness has anything to do with limitations.
Well, if you take something that has consciousness and something that doesn't, the thing that lacks consciousness is more limited than the thing that has it in that regard.
No, it's not.
Why?
Germs are not more limited than I am. Spaceships are not more limited than I am. Cars are not more limited than I am. Black holes can do a lot more than I am. I'm more limited than they are. Consciousness does not take away from limitations.
It doesn't take away. So yeah, I mean a germ certainly has limitations that you don't have, but they're limited in that they lack consciousness. They may have, like, a black hole has powers. I mean, you're not unlimited. So yeah, you lack powers that a black hole has, and a black hole lacks features that you have. It doesn't have consciousness.
So one, limitations have nothing to do with existence. Saying something's limited or not limited has no connection to reality. It has no connection to the argument at all. It's just made up. It's a made up term, like saying blah 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 blah.
I don't think it's made up. I mean, a limitation is a real feature that we apply. Like I say, like this person's
Nope.
limited, and no.
No, it's not like gravity is a real feature. Weights, mass, energy, these are all real features that exist in reality. Limitation is a made up thing in our heads, like tribbles or pretty or fuzzy. It doesn't exist. It's not a real thing. It's just made up.
So would you agree that there are things that are spatially limited, or if you don't want to use that word, what would you say? Like if something has this shape
They
and
occupy space.
and it's spatially limited. It's limited
No,
to
it just occupies some space and not other space. Limitation is just an arbitrary definition. It's like saying height. We describe something as being tall, but it's not limited by not being infinitely tall. It just has a specific height. There's no limitation there. Not a limitation.
Well, somebody who's
Limitation,
5 feet is more limited in their height than somebody who's 6 feet.
no, limitation is an arbitrary description. It's like saying someone who's 5 feet is prettier than someone who's 6 feet. It's a complete arbitrary limitation. It has nothing to do with actual reality. There is no such thing as a limitation property. It doesn't exist. Matter exists, energy exists, gravity exists. These are things that exist in reality. Limitation does not exist in reality. It's just an arbitrary distinction that we place on things.
I mean, I agree it's a concept. It's not like you can go out there and find a limitation. It's a concept that we use to describe, but it's a legitimate concept. If I say you have this feature and not that feature, you have this limitation and not this other limitation. I mean, it's an appropriate word to apply.
Correct, just like fuzzy is, or hot,
Exactly.
or pretty. but none of those things correspond to reality. It's not an existing property of something that exists in reality. It's a description that we have made up to describe things. So you can't apply that and say it applies to a necessary being and exists, because it's not an existing property. It's an imaginary property. It's an imagined thing. So it can apply to imaginary beings that don't exist, but it can't apply to real things that exist.
I mean, I would say fuzziness and pretty, I mean, are real features. I mean, they're things that we find. I mean, we're talking about them right now. I mean, you could say that they are conceptual and that we label them, but they are real things we find in reality. I mean, we have experience of them. That's what we're talking about.
Well, no, pretty is not an actual existing thing. It's, again, just a subjective interpretation. Fuzzy might be, maybe, depending on how you define it. Pretty is not. So no, like limitations would be like pretty. It's just a subjective interpretation. It has nothing to do with existing things in reality.
I mean, I would disagree on the pretty one, but we can leave that example aside. I mean,
Well, no, let's stick with that. Let's say I can scientifically demonstrate gravity, mass, and energy. Can you scientifically demonstrate limitations? Like, prove it. Give me a testable prediction that can demonstrate it's not imaginary.
okay, well, now you're saying that something's only real if it can make a testable prediction, but I mean,
No, I
there's,
didn't say that. I didn't say that at all.
okay, so,
You need
okay.
some way, so this is true of all epistemology. You need some criteria to differentiate an imaginary thing from a real thing. The criteria I use is science. You may have some different criteria, that's totally fine. But you need to present your criteria of why this is not an imaginary thing. Because as far as I can tell, your description of limitation is just an imaginary thing in your head and nothing more. So it doesn't apply to things in reality. You can't apply it to some kind of spectrum of things existing in the world, or I could just make up a different kind of property like woggly bloogly, and the greatest woggly bloogly is the spaghetti monster, therefore the spaghetti monster exists. And obviously you're not convinced by that argument because it's complete nonsense, which is the same as the argument you're making now.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's complete nonsense because I don't know what you just said. Like, I don't know what that, there's no content to that statement. It was just a sound, but we know what I mean when I'm saying limitations. It has real content to it.
No, again, the fact that you have an imagined idea of what you think it means, it's made up in your head, it has no content because it does not refer to things in reality. Unless you can demonstrate it exists, like matter and energy and gravity, it doesn't have any content referring to reality. It's just an imagined thing in your head.
Okay, so, well, I just want to piece together your view here. So you're saying you know that gravity is real because you could, I mean, if this isn't it, please clarify. You're saying gravity is real because you can make a testable prediction. Is that correct?
We can demonstrate gravity is not an imaginary thing because we can make testable predictions with it, yes.
Okay. Now, do you accept the cogito ergo sum argument?
Yes,
Okay, why?
because I experience myself.
Right, but you could be an illusion.
No,
Why?
because I experience myself. That's the point of cogito ergo sum, is that you can't be an illusion.
Well, you could be an illusion. The point is that it commits a logical contradiction.
No.
You can't exist and then think you don't exist at the same time because that entails a contradiction.
Well, the contradiction is just a description of the fact that I exist. It's irrelevant to the actual argument. The fact that I exist and I experience my existence can't be false.
Right.
The logical contradiction is just a description of that. It's irrelevant to the actual argument.
I mean, I would disagree. I mean, the argument itself, I would look at, I mean, the reason why it's convincing to me, at least, is I would say, if I exist, I mean, if I doubt that I exist, I would have to exist in order to be able to doubt that I exist. There's a contradiction there, so therefore I have to exist. If I can doubt my own existence, I accept the argument because it commits a logical contradiction if I reject it. I don't think it makes
No,
it
the
best.
logic just describes the fact that it's true, because truth is a property of sentences. The fact that it's true is actually just a property of reality. So I exist. It's just a true statement about reality. Now, whether or not you're saying that it's a contradiction for me to not exist and exist at the same time, it's just a different way to say I exist. The logic there, logic is a description of reality. It doesn't govern reality. It doesn't make reality true. It describes reality. So I exist, which is a fact of reality. And then we can use logic to describe that in different ways by saying I can't not exist and exist at the same time. But again, the logic is just a description of reality. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that's a description of reality, but I would still love non-contradiction absolutely holds, at least for a concrete item. You can't
No,
exist
again,
and not.
it's just a description. Logic and math are formal languages, like English is a language. Other formal languages would be like Python, C++, whatever programming language Microsoft uses. Those are all formal languages like logic and math. They're just descriptions. They don't exist as concrete things in the world. They're, again, just like languages.
I mean, I agree that they're just descriptions. I don't think we could go out there and find the law of non-contradiction. But let me ask, do you think that the law of non-contradiction is true or false, or is that just a misput question?
True and false are properties of sentences. So it's like saying, is that English structured correctly? That's
Okay,
all true and false means.
do you think it's universally binding? Do you think it can be
No.
violated? No.
Yes, there are different kinds of logics other than standard logic that negate the law of non-contradiction, like intuitionistic logic, quantum logic, fuzzy logic, many-valued logic. It's not something that holds the universe together. It's something that we use to describe the universe, like English. You could just use other languages to describe it. You don't need the law of non-contradiction there.
Forgive me 1 second for jumping in, guys. Is just to be sure, because I think it's just to be, I mean, for clarity's sake, faith, is that any different from belief in God in this debate? Fair to say. Do you mean
Probably
that to
not.
use them as synonyms? I'm totally cool either way. I just had somebody that was like, hey, just to kind of get the ball rolling, can we quick define that? And I was like, yeah, sure, that's worthwhile.
I mean,
He defined it as trust, so I'm assuming it's the same thing as like a belief based on evidence kind of a thing.
Okay,
yeah, that's fair.
you bet.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you
Okay,
guys.
I mean, I agree that the law of non-contradiction is a description, but now you made an analogy between that and the English language. Now, the English language is contingent in that we could have a different language, of course, but I'm going to say the law, I mean, I know there are different kinds of logics, but let me ask you this then. Do you think it's universally binding, as in it could not be violated, that something could exist and not exist at the same time? Do you think that's universally binding?
Again, that's a description using language. It is proper language to say that, but it is not universally binding. No.
I mean, I guess I don't know what you mean by universally binding. I mean, I don't think that
The
there's no.
laws of logic don't hold reality together. They just describe
I
reality.
agree.
The laws don't bind reality. It's not universally binding. It just happens to be the case. This is the way reality is. And laws of logic aren't universally. They don't bind it together. They don't make it this way. They just describe the way it is.
Okay, I mean, I agree they just described the way it is, but it sounded like you said reality could have been otherwise. Like the laws, we could live in a world in which the law of non-contradiction doesn't apply in the way that it does. Would you say that that's possible?
The law of non-contradiction doesn't apply to anything. It's just a description. It's like saying the English word tree. The word tree does not bind trees and make them trees. We just use the word tree to describe trees. So what you're saying is that you think the law of non-contradiction governs reality, like it applies to reality, it holds reality in some way. This is not true. The law of non-contradiction is a language.
Oh, I mean, I agree. Like, I want to get off this. Like, I don't think it binds reality together. It's a description, but it's also a description that's always going to be true in every possible world in regards to whether something exists or not. It can't exist and not exist at the same time, not because the law of non-contradiction prevents it from being otherwise, but that's just the way reality has to be.
Well, no, we assume that's the case. It may not be. The fact that we can't understand what it would mean to be false doesn't mean it can't be false.
Okay, then we have a different foundation starting point. I
I
mean,
mean, it's provable. You can just look at the other logics. There are other logics that reject this. You don't need that one. That is not universal.
yeah, the law of non-contradiction may not be universal in all situations, but I'm saying in regards to something and existing and not existing at the same time, to me, there's not a more obvious statement that could be true than that. Like, if you're going to reject that, then we just have a different starting point of what's reasonable.
Again, there are different logics are made up human languages, and there are made up human languages that reject that idea, the law of non-contradiction. They use different laws to describe reality. So yes, that does not apply in all possible worlds, no matter what. No, it's just a description. You can use different descriptions.
Yeah, I mean, I know that there are different logics, but to me, that's incoherent. The idea that, I mean, if something's incoherent, I have to reject it. The idea that something could exist and not exist at the same time is utterly incoherent.
Again, the way you're thinking about this is that you're thinking the laws govern. That's the problem. The reason you don't understand this is because they don't. When you say, can something exist and not exist at the same time, you're presupposing that the law somehow impacts the existence of the thing. It doesn't.
No, I mean, I'd want to, I mean, whether we agree or not, I don't think the laws govern. I don't think the laws exist. I think they are concepts that we use to describe reality, which sounds like what you're saying, or
Right.
basically what you're saying. but I do think that it could not have failed to be the case that those concepts will always apply in all situations in regards to a concrete object. It could not fail to exist and not I mean, excuse me, it could not exist and not exist at the same time. There's no possible world where that could be the case.
It's impossible for us to describe that being the case. Whether or not reality can do that or not is we can't answer that. We can only say we can't describe that. We can't imagine that. Whether or not it can or cannot be is not something we can say.
Okay, I mean, then you have a different view of either rationality or you have more of a skepticism about what our minds can attain. I mean, to me, there's no, if you were to ask me what's the most obviously true thing, and I would say that something can't exist and, or something can't, yeah, exist and not exist at the same time, there's nothing more obviously true than that.
I mean, we can grant that, but it still doesn't do anything to help your argument.
Well, it applies because it seems like your starting point is that we come to know that something's true, or at least the most reasonable way, again, correct me if I'm wrong, is if we can test it. But I reject that because the most obviously true, um, the most clearest way to come to a truth is if it's logically, deductively follows.
No, I said we need some way to differentiate between imaginary things and real things. Language is an imaginary thing. It's in our heads.
That's fine, but I would say the law of non-contradiction applying to concrete objects is not imaginary. I mean, it is conceptual, but it applies in all possible worlds.
No, it's a language, so it's imaginary by definition. Just go to the classical logic, Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. Logic is a formal language, so it's a language like English. That's it.
Yeah,
The word tree can apply to physical things. It's still imaginary.
yeah, I mean, I agree that it's conceptual, if that's what you mean, but I would still say it applies in all possible worlds in that case. And to me, that shows it. If that's accepted, at least, then that's a counterexample to your epistemology. I don't need a test for that.
No,
I just intuit that
no.
that's true.
Again, language logic is a language. Just definition of Stanford, you don't get an opinion on this. So by definition, it's conceptual. Imaginary, I'm using imaginary and conceptual to mean the same thing.
No,
So
I agree
no,
with
you
that.
have not presented a counterexample to my epistemology because when I say you need some way to differentiate between the imaginary or the conceptual and the non-imaginary, logic is one of the imaginary things.
Okay, let me try this.
The fact that we can't demonstrate it with a testable prediction means it's not one of the non-imaginary things because it's one of the imaginary things.
Okay, and by imaginary you mean conceptual, is that right?
Yes, I'm using those synonymously.
Okay, great. Okay, so well, let me try this then. So why should I accept your system? I'm going to say that you're going to need to put it into a logical structure where I'm going to see the conclusions. Like, if we can test something, then that's reasonable. We can test for this, therefore it's reasonable. I mean, aren't you using a logical structure to argue for that framework?
Yes, but logic is perfectly consistent with my framework. Logic is conceptual. Conceptual knowledge is a thing, just like empirical knowledge is a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's conceptual and it applies to your framework. That's my very point. Your framework, at least the way I'm looking at it, rests on accepting logic. Like, I
Right. I
totally,
don't. Yes. So again, there's different kinds of knowledge. There's the conceptual imaginary kind of knowledge, and then there's the non-imaginary kind of knowledge, which is like empirical in my case. So logic and math and language are the conceptual imaginary kinds of knowledge, and then the things that are outside of our minds are the non-conceptual kind of knowledge. So we need some way to differentiate between these two things, and we use testable predictions to do that. So we can't do testable predictions of logic and math because they're conceptual. So they aren't the non-conceptual kind. They're in our head. I grant those. They're still true. They're still kinds of knowledge, and we can still use them to do things, but they're just not the non-conceptual kinds of knowledge. There's no contradiction there with my model.
right. I want to clarify. You just said they're still true. What was the referent for there? What were you referring to?
Logic and math,
Yeah, you
the
said they're
knowledge,
still,
conceptual knowledge.
yeah. I mean, it sounded like you said logic is still true, and I would agree if that's what you said.
Right?
Is that what you,
Yes. So conceptual knowledge is a thing. Yes.
all right, great. I mean, that's my position.
Okay. I still don't understand how that relates to the problem. So
Well, it
again,
sounds
I
like
mean,
you were being a skeptic about the universality of at least the logical statement that I put forward about something existing and not existing. Now it seems like you're affirming it, which would be great. But also, you're saying that I should accept your epistemology that we need to test something or that we need to have some way to distinguish the real and the imaginary and so on. Great, but why should I accept that? And I think you're going to have to put forward a logical argument and then logic is going to be your bedrock again, and then we're back to logic as our
No,
bedrock,
again,
not
nothing you're saying
empiricism.
is making sense. You just don't understand either what logic is or what my argument is. So let me try to explain it to you this way. Logic and math are real. They're true. They do exist. They are knowledge. I granted, I'm not going to challenge that. That is true. They're languages, but they are knowledge. And then we can use those to build models, like logical models, different kinds of logic and whatever. And we can apply those models to try and make distinctions about what we experience. So if I imagine a unicorn, but I don't see a unicorn in front of me, there is some difference between my imagination and reality. They are not the same thing.
One
Yes, I
thing,
am using to do this. That's perfectly fine. But you need some criteria to differentiate between is it imaginary or is it real? Now you're claiming there is this God thing or this property of limitations. And you have to say, is this property of limitations one of the imaginary things or one of the real things? Now, if it's imaginary like logic, then it doesn't exist. You can't say it applies to something in the world like God because it doesn't exist. There's not like a thing that is imaginary property that can be used to apply to real things that actually exist in the world. It doesn't work that way. They're just imaginary.
1 second. Just to kind of take a back step in terms of making sure we don't miss the forest for the trees, is there a way in which we could kind of explain how this in-depth discussion relates to the broader question of is faith in God reasonable? I think we've just lost a few people as it's gotten pretty deep in the thickets.
Right. So he's claiming that there is this thing called limitations, and it's a property that exists in reality, and that exists on a spectrum. And some things have more limitations, some things have less limitations, like something has more height and less height. And at the epitome of the least of all limitations is this God thingy. So he's applying this abstract concept of limitations to real things in the world and saying they actually have it, like things have mass and energy. He's saying this is a real thing and not just in his head. And so I'm saying you have to demonstrate that. Demonstrate it's not an imaginary thing in your head. And then he's going off on this tangent about my epistemology saying it needs logic, which uses logic. That has absolutely nothing to do with my point and does nothing to try and support his point.
Okay, just to make sure how about this? Is there some sort of argument that this sounds new to me and I'm a little bit behind on my philosophy of religion, but is there a kind of a mainstream argument in philosophy of religion that this is almost analogous to Caleb? Just to try to help anchor the audience to like a similar idea. I think that it's a challenging argument, not to mean it's in any way not good or sound, but just it's a little bit, if you're able to kind of give the broad structure of it.
Sure. I mean, it's a version of the argument from contingency. There are different versions of it, and of course, like Craig and Josh Rasmussen and different people debate. They give different versions. So I'm giving one. It seems like, based on previous debates and discussions, Tom accepts that there's some sort of necessary or eternal nature or thing. So we're kind of working, or at least I'm working off of that.
Okay.
I agree there's something necessary, a sort of ground of existence. And then I'm arguing furthermore, since this is necessary, that limitations, and by limitations, I mean any feature that we could properly assign the label of a limit to, like we do in our everyday language all the time. Limitations are contingent, meaning, and a contingent thing is something that could have been otherwise. So the necessary reality cannot have limitations. And from there, it follows the necessary reality has no limit in its power, in its knowledge, and I'm going to also argue in its charity, in its justice. And from there, that would be God, a necessary, all powerful, all knowing, all charitable reality. And Thomas seems to be objecting, of course, they saying limits are just imaginary. And I'm saying I agree if by that you mean conceptual. And it just seems like we have a different starting point. I mean, we have a different epistemology on how we apply our language to reality.
Okay.
All right, so starting from there are conceptual things that don't exist. Leprechauns do not exist, correct?
Correct. As far as we know, yes.
So if we grant that limitations are a conceptual thing, they could be a real thing that exists in the world, or they could be an imaginary thing like leprechauns that don't exist in the world, correct? Some conceptual things are real, some conceptual things are not real.
Some conceptual things are not real. If by conceptual you mean some concrete objects are not real, yes. But are limitations real? Well, yeah, because I see limited things all around me. You have limitations, I do, and so
No.
on.
Go back, stop. there are imaginary conceptual things that exist and imaginary conceptual things that do not exist. They do not correspond to anything in reality. They're totally made up, magic, Harry Potter wizardry stuff, the Force in Star Wars. There are conceptual things that don't exist.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
So you have presented this conceptual thing, which is limitations. Now you have to show it's one of the existing conceptual things and not one of the imaginary conceptual things like the Force.
Sure. And this is how I determine that. I observe it just like gravity.
Okay, how do you observe limitations?
I observe that, the frames behind me are limited in their shape. They're not circles, they're
No, you
squares.
observe a shape and you call it limited. That's not an observation of limitation.
Okay, the term limitation is more generic. It's like the term shape. I mean, the term shape applies to the frames behind me. We have a word square. It's a concept. It's a language, and it properly applies to the frames behind me.
All right,
So
let me phrase it to you this way. Let's say we have a ruler that's 1 foot long. Now, is it limited because it's not 0 feet long, or is it limited because it's not infinitely feet long? Depending on how you define limit, it could be limited in the positive way or the negative way. So every limit has its opposing limit. So you can define limitations in the exact opposite way you're defining them. So I could say the most limited thing is the being that has the most power. That's the most limitation. The least limitation is the one that has the least power. So your arbitrary definition of limit to fit your idea of a god is totally made up, has no basis in reality. I can just invert the definition. So now we have two contradicting definitions, and we have to show which one is right, which one corresponds to reality, which one doesn't. Are you with me so far?
Yeah, I mean, then we need to do an appropriate application of the term. Yeah, I mean, something that's 5 feet is more limited in height than something that's 6 feet. Now, you brought up the example of the ruler. You said, is it limited because it's not infinite? Yes. Is it limit?
Let's use your example of height. You said it's someone who's 5 feet is more limited than someone who's 6 feet. No, in a
In
culture of
height?
people like short people, the person who has 5 feet is less limited than the person who's 6 feet.
The person who's 5 feet is more limited in their height than the person who is 6 feet.
No, not for a culture who values shortness more than height. The limitation only applies arbitrarily based on your subjective interpretation of what limits are. The limit can be a greater or a lesser kind of a limit. There is no objective definition of limits. They don't exist. There isn't such a thing. Like there is an objective definition of mass. There is an objective definition of energy. There is an objective definition of gravity. You don't get an opinion on those. You can't change those. Limits don't have that. They're just a made up social construction.
Okay, let me respond to that. So you're saying, well, in some cultures, if they value shortness over height, then the height would be, or a tallerness, whatever you want to call it, would be the limitation. Well, that just seems to be like a matter of preference. I could say, what if there's a culture that doesn't view mass the way we do? Oh, now it's just an imaginary feature. I mean, I don't see how that follows.
Well, again, because mass we can demonstrate. Mass has an objective way to test and verify it exists, which means you don't get an opinion on mass. Limitation does not.
By observations, right?
Correct.
Okay,
That's the prediction.
I can observe limitations.
Okay, how do you observe limitation?
I notice that somebody is 6 feet, somebody else is 5. The person who's 5 is more limited in their height than somebody who's 6.
I already proved that false. You can just say the opposite is true because your observation is subjective interpretation.
No, because you're using a different definition of limit at that point. You said, well, some cultures prefer it. Well, I'm not talking about.
No. That's the point. That's the point. All you have is a made-up definition. Now, for mass, I don't just have a made-up definition. I have provable fact about reality. We can prove mass exists in reality. You don't get an interpretation. You don't get to define mass. It's real, whether you like it or not. Limitations are not. Limitations are all the definition. It's their alternative definition of this alternate society is equally plausible as your definition. Like we could say there is this made-up property of greatness, and this greatness thing is the tallest thing. And a different society says, no, the greatest thing is the shortest thing. Both are equally likely to be true about reality because we don't have a way to demonstrate which one reality corresponds to. It could be the case that reality likes the taller thing, so the taller thing is greater. Or it could be the case that reality likes the smaller thing, so the smaller thing is greater. We don't know because we don't have a way to measure greatness in terms of reality. We can measure mass in terms of reality. We can't measure limitations or greatness in terms of reality.
Okay, so
One
now
second. Just forgive me for interrupting, guys. So sorry, especially Caleb. I know that you got a round in the chamber ready to go, but just wanted to just quick say it seems like we might be coming to somewhat of a stalemate. Maybe there's a point at which we could jump to that would move us past that stalemate. I know that there are different ways in which the arguments can be approached, and so that's kind of what I'm hoping for, is that some people in the audience are saying, it looks like we're kind of coming to a stalemate.
Sure. Okay, I'll respond to this and then make a new point. So you're now applying the word greatness. I'm not bringing in the word greatness. I'm not bringing in subjective terms. These are applicable concepts, just like the concept of a square is applicable to the frames behind me.
I don't think your limitation is a subjective term, just like greatness. It's made up. There's no basis in reality.
Yeah,
You'd have to demonstrate it's actually a thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's obviously applicable. It's a very generic term. It's more generic than shape and so on. It's one of the most generic terms. That doesn't mean it's made up. But I want to make another point. So you accept that, or at least you find it reasonable to think that there's a necessary nature or reality. Is that correct? Or at least you think that's a plausible
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, why do you accept that?
Because there has to be a way reality is. Reality exists. Reality is the way reality is.
All right, but why does it have to be necessary?
Because that's what it means to be necessary.
Okay, I mean, I agree. If you're gonna, in the sense that if you're gonna say that it's logically necessary that something is necessary, then I mean, I agree. But I mean, that's kind of my point all along.
So a necessary thing is something that makes the statement there was a philosophical nothing false. So there was never a time, essentially, that there was ever a philosophical nothing. There is always something that existed. That thing is the necessary thing. Whatever that is that makes that statement false is the necessary thing.
I mean, I totally agree. I feel like you used logic to arrive at that statement. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, then I mean, we agree on that starting point. You can use logic to deduce things about reality without observations. I mean, without tests.
You can use logic to describe reality. It doesn't deduce anything. It's just describing reality. That's it.
Well, it does
No,
deduce.
it doesn't demonstrate anything. It just describes. That's it. You can use logic to describe reality, like you can use English to describe reality. You can't demonstrate something exists with logic. That doesn't work. No.
Oh,
You can't logically demonstrate an apple exists.
Okay, but wait, it seems like you used logic to determine that something's necessary.
No, I use logic to describe reality. That's it.
Okay, so let me ask again, do you agree that it's plausible that there is a necessary nature or reality?
Yes.
Okay, great. And I think you used logic to describe reality with premises to reach that conclusion. And I agree that that's totally legitimate to do.
No. The logic describes the fact that it's true. I didn't use logic to get to that conclusion. I'm just using logic to describe it. I used the word tree to describe trees. Trees don't exist because I use the word tree.
Did logic help you reach the conclusion that there's a necessary nature?
It describes it, yes.
So did it help you reach that conclusion?
It describes it. You're not understanding. You just don't understand how logic works here. You're missing the point. Logic does not make things true. Logic describes things that are true.
I agree it doesn't make things true, but it helps us arrive at conclusions, like cogito ergo sum. That helps me.
Yes.
That helps me have a foundation for the conclusion that I must exist. Your argument.
Do you know the difference between epistemology and ontology?
What was that?
Do you know the difference between epistemology and ontology?
Yes.
So logic is a form of epistemology. So it's something we use to learn things, to gain knowledge. It has nothing to do with what exists. It just describes the things that exist. There's no ontology of logic. Logic isn't a part of the universe. Logic just describes the reality of the universe.
Right. I mean, listen, like I definitely agree with that, but I think it helps us reach conclusions that are ontological. And you may just disagree, but I think that you implicitly use that too. Like you arrive at the conclusion that there's a necessary nature, and I think you use logic to do that. And I agree.
Right. We need to use logic to describe things that exist, but logic doesn't make things exist. You cannot use pure logic to get an apple exists. There is no combination of abstract logic that gets you apple. You will have to combine the abstract logic with the empirical existence of a thing. So, like, for example, if no reality existed, then logic, you could not get to a necessary thing. So the only reason we can get there is a necessary thing is because there is a reality that we experience, and we can use logic to describe it. It is not the logic that gets us there. The logic is irrelevant to the fact that it's there. Logic just describes the fact that there is a reality. So the reality precedes the logic, and we use the logic to describe the reality. Like if I said, I saw a dog, that's reasonable to believe because we have the logic of, or the conceptual evidence of my testimony that I saw, in addition to the empirical evidence of the dog. So if we use logic to describe reality, the reality has to exist and we have to experience it for there to be able to describe that there's a necessary thing. The necessary thing has nothing to do with the logic. The logic is just a description. There is no connection there at all. The ontology is true independent of the logic.
I mean, I agree with everything you said except that last part. But anyhow, I agree that logic doesn't make things the case. But let me just make this one point. There are people who think there is no necessary nature. So how would you convince those people? You'd have to use a logical argument.
I don't care about them. The fact that I would convince them or not is irrelevant to anything.
Okay.
So again, the logic is irrelevant to the ontology. You don't need it. It's irrelevant. For example, it isn't the case that there must necessarily be a necessary thing. It could be the case that there was a philosophical nothing. If there was a philosophical nothing, then logic wouldn't describe it anymore. You couldn't describe it. It would be a nothing.
I mean, I
So the
disagree with
only
that.
reason you can use logic to get to a necessary thing is because there is a reality to describe with logic.
I mean, I disagree with that because if there really could have been nothingness, I mean, I would say that that state of nothingness is necessary, and this is why the logic reaches that
No,
conclusion. Yeah,
no,
yeah, because
no,
necessary.
nothing. There's nothing correlates to that at all. No,
Yeah, because
no,
necessary.
it's not.
Okay,
You
wait.
applied a trait of necessary to nothing. You can't do that because it stops being nothing. Logic cannot describe nothing.
I mean, I disagree with that, but necessary means could not have been otherwise. Do you agree?
No,
No. Okay. How would you define necessary?
something that exists and makes the statement there was a philosophical nothing false.
Okay, I mean, that's fine. Something that exists, it makes a statement. I mean, that's not always how the word necessary typically means
Well, yeah,
could
there's
not have
lots of
been.
different ways to define necessary, but I'm using the terms in the like necessary being kind of necessary.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm doing too. But I mean, to say that something exists, I mean, yeah, something could contingently exist. It wouldn't be necessary.
Right, I'm using it in the terms of the necessary being. Like, what is a necessary being? You asked me to define that earlier, and I defined it as the thing that makes the statement there is a philosophical nothing false.
A
That's what I mean
contingent,
by necessary in that context.
a contingent thing could make that statement as well.
One second.
No,
Yeah,
We're gonna.
a contingent thing could reach the conclusion why there's something rather than nothing because there's something contingent that exists. Go ahead.
We're going to give Tom a response, but before doing that, I want to just let people know we are taking questions for the Q&A, which is quickly approaching. And I forgot to mention the super chats. If you want to do a super chat, they go to the top of the list automatically that we read from, and it can allow you to make a comment toward one of the speakers. If you want to make a comment rather than a question, of course, they would get a chance to respond to. With that, Tom, if you had a response, I want to give you a quick response, and then we can move to the next portion.
yeah, so one of the possibilities of the necessary thing is a set of infinite universes. So each independent universe would be contingent on the previous universe, but the whole set is itself necessary. So even though a necessary thing can make the philosophical thing false, it's only because it rests in a necessary thing. Or a contingent thing can make this statement, a philosophical nothing existed false. It rests in a necessary thing like an infinite regress of universes. So there is a necessary thing there, even if the contingent thing can make it false. That necessary thing is the set of infinite universes.
Gotcha. Next up, any closing, you could say, cases, or in particular, if either of you want to give a position on the Christian God in particular. I know that I don't want to jump, I know that I'm throwing something at you you didn't expect, but because it is an interesting and Caleb's position in particular, is this something you guys want to kind of poke at for a few minutes before we go into the Q&A?
I mean, sure.
Sounds enthusiastic. Sorry. I love you, dry apologist. You are the man. I'm stoked you guys are here. Seriously. Even keeled. You guys are both even keeled. I like that you guys. Caleb, do you have a lot of debate experience? Because you are actually, you never get like triggered. You never get like antsy or like irritated during your debates. Usually that correlates with a lot of debate experience.
Yeah, I do have some experience, and it's just my personality. But I think it's important that people don't get triggered. So
Yeah, you got it. So the Christian God in particular, and this is always something that we could do like a kind of reuniting matchup in which if you introduce the argument now just for a few minutes and kind of hear Tom's thoughts, maybe like one of your main arguments for Christian theism in particular. And like I said, I don't expect this to go long, but just to kind of introduce the idea and kind of see what's out there, and then we can go into the Q&A pretty quick here.
okay, sure. So I'll just give a couple of quick arguments. I know these both you would need a whole debate, but I'm just going to throw them out. So one argument is, Old Testament prophecies. I know a lot of them that get thrown out are have some problems, but I think the typology within the Old Testament, like events that happened in the Old Testament, mirror the life of Jesus in a way that couldn't have been orchestrated. I would need time to unpack that, but that's one argument. And then another argument is Jesus's moral character. Somebody who exudes the kind of authority that Jesus had is either God or they're not a moral character, or a moral person. This isn't the Lord, liar, lunatic argument per se, but it's similar to that. So either you have to say Jesus was immoral, or you have to say that he didn't exude the type of character that he had. So it reaches a dichotomy. Again, I need more time to debate those, but those are two arguments that I like.
Tom, initial thoughts on these arguments. Are you going to become a Christian right now?
No, the Old Testament prophecies are completely ambiguous. You can interpret them to mean whatever you want, as described by most historians. They're just meaningless. I mean, if they were actual predictions, that would be great evidence, but they're just arbitrary and mean nothing, essentially. And the liar, lunatic, or Lord is just a false trichotomy because legend is a possibility. Most of what Jesus said could have just been false or made up, constructed, reimagined, any combination of those. So, I mean, the fact that he could have been like thought he was Lord is totally possible. So he wasn't lying because he wasn't deliberately being false. He was just could have been deluded, or it could have been made up. And so there's lots of possibilities there. None of that is actually evidence of it being true either way. And liar and lunatic are both more likely than Lord, infinitely more likely. So those would both be more reasonable conclusions anyway.
Gotcha. With that, don't get me wrong, Caleb. I know you've got a response. I don't want to, I hate doing it, but otherwise you'd be here all night if we kept going infinitely back and forth. So that may be a debate in which we might be able to hear Caleb's response in the future. That would be an interesting one if there's a debate on the Christian God. So, like I said, Caleb, forgive me for cutting you off, but it would be a fun future debate. And with that, we are going to jump right into the Q&A. So, want to mention, as I mentioned earlier, but can't help but say it, because I just want you guys to know how much we appreciate the debaters. Their links are down in the description. And so, if you enjoy what you're hearing, you can check them out. You can even reach out to them. And with that, thanks for your super chat, Ashley DeMarco. Coming at you, TJump, right out of the gates. Ashley says, will TJump admit that Kyle screwed Steve yet?
If you show me the court cases where the court ruled that, then sure. But until then, I'm just going to say they're both idiots and I don't know what happened.
Yee. Okay, well, with that, we do have one that's perhaps relevant to that. I could have sworn I saw one in here. I thought Oh, Crackerjack 12. Give us what we want, James. McCrae versus Jump. Tom, are you willing to debate Steve McCrae on any topic, whatever you guys want? Crackerjack 12 wants to see you guys get it on.
Yeah, I'd actually kind of like to debate him on the atheism, agnosticism, the different definitions.
Oh snap! Well, whatever you guys want, you can see what's up in email, and whether it be, I think Steve also, I could have sworn Steve also said that Well, yeah, you guys did get to cross swords on the whole non sequitur show controversy, but that's one that Nick Sauter. Am I saying it right? Forgive me if I'm saying it wrong. Correct me. But Nicholas, I should say, Nicholas Lamar Suter. Yeah, I totally butchered that. I'm so sorry, Nicholas. But Nicholas said that's also a topic he would love to do. One in which it would be, namely, the non sequitur show debacle. So that's one TJump that Nicholas Lamar Suter might want to spar with you on, as well as I know that Nicholas Lamar Suter also wanted to debate on, and this is one that we reached out to him. I don't think we caught him on time. He's a busy guy. So I think he was Suter. Thanks for that, Steve. He gave me corrected me. Is that Nicholas Lamar Suter also is excited to debate, should we want God to exist? That's something we've never done before, and I know TJump is interested in it, so that's one you can expect coming up as well. In addition, we are amped. This one is honestly going to be one of our biggest creation evolution debates we've had. This Friday, Kent Hovind, TJump's dad, is going to be on here debating Tony Reed. So that's going to be a lot of fun. He's not really TJump's dad that we know of. But with more of the super chats things, Kyle's bookkeeper, I have a feeling this isn't really Kyle's bookkeeper, said, glad to announce all super chats are going to me tonight. Thanks for that, Kyle's bookkeeper. Ronald Bendanka, thanks for your super chat as well. He said, can we get Caleb to define quote unquote faith, then have Tom address quote faith as well?
Okay, so faith I'm defining as trust in what's most plausible or what's most reasonable given evidence and logic.
All right, so the classic atheist definition of faith is a belief without evidence, but if I use that definition in this context, I would be strawmanning his position because it's not what he believes faith is. So in this kind of a debate, I kind of have to adopt whatever definition he uses because he's the one holding the positive position, kind of like how theists have to adopt whatever definition atheists use when they define atheism because it's their position. Whoever's defining the position gets to define it.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. And I'm just digging one up. So sorry about that. But I do know Ashley DeMarco had a super chat that just came in. We appreciate it, Ashley. And as I pull this up, so sorry. Thanks for your patience. Okay. Ashley said, TJ, TJump needs papers to know what everyone else knows. Okay? What do you think of them apples, Tom?
That's right. Without evidence, you withhold judgment like a rational human being.
Tom is always up for a fight. So thank you, Ashley, for your super chat. And with that, so sorry, I'm like scrambled here. I'm trying to figure out, basically, I usually like put the questions into a list. And then when I added this to the list, this person's comment, I accidentally didn't copy and paste their name along with it. And so I'm going to the community tab to just make sure I want to give a shout out to their name. But also want to say, we are excited. Recently, we have created the Patreon account. And so this is something that we would love for you. A lot of people are like, hey, we're pumped for this channel, which we totally appreciate because this channel is honestly like, I consider it an abstract entity belonging to everyone else. And so right now we have, for just $2, you can have your name down there in the Patreon scroll, which is our way of saying thanks so much for your support. We're excited. You remember when we used to have audio issues? Now we're pumped. We have this Blue Yeti. So smooth sound. No one's making fun of us anymore, at least not for the audio. Next, thanks for that. So I want to mention that. And one second. Okay, I don't know how to pronounce this. This looks like it's another language, but we appreciate your super chat. It really, like, legit is another language. They said, is belief in God reasonable? Yes or no, and why?
Yes, for reasons that I provided in the debate.
Gotcha.
No, because there's literally no difference between saying God exists and saying, oh, look, there's a box, it weighs 2 pounds, there must be a leprechaun in it. can be explained by literally everything else that actually has evidence. We don't have to make new things up like abstract properties that don't exist in the world to support it.
Gotcha. Also, a last one. Praise I am that I am. Thanks for your super chat. He said, "You the man, James. That's really kind of you. But seriously, I'm honestly just a guy pulling like little email levers in the background. I can't thank everybody else for making the show so epic, such as our debaters tonight and just everybody who's helped us, which is frankly everybody. Travis Fisher, thanks for your super chat. This one came in. So this is he said a Christian is not I think this is actually it shows us for this debate. It says a Christian is not a good opponent for this subject. Instead of determining if anti-theism is a good stance, it will turn more into if there is a God. I think what happened is that super chat like got pushed into this live stream somehow from the last one, because Nicholas Lamar Suter just came on and debated anti-theism, which is an epic debate, but that's where that super chat I think came from. Mississippi Wildlife, thanks for your super chat. They said $5 just because G-Man isn't here. Oh, come on. G-Man, I feel bad. The last time G-Man was on was the first time, and I love I thought we had a good relationship. I think we still do, but it just needs a little bit of healing, a little love right now. Basically, G-Man, like, Jake was trolling him. Jake from Hugo and Jake was totally purposely getting G-Man mad with these, like, little, like, he was very subtle, but he was trolling G-Man. G-Man took the bait. I love you, G-Man, but man, I just wish I couldn't help it. I laughed because he was, like, screaming. But he's got passion. There's nothing wrong with that. So we love you, G-Man. We hope you're doing all right. And then the name of the person who I said that there's YouTube profiles in another language, that's Amir. Thanks so much, Amir, for your super chat, and thanks for letting me know that. I appreciate it. And one more came in. Jamie Russell, thanks for your super chat for $10. He said, how did the writer of Genesis manage to show a biological decay curve in the diminishing ages of the patriarchs? This is for Tom. So I think that they're referring to, like, after the flood. I've seen Standing for Truth present this. After the flood, the ages of the patriarchs, if you look at them, like, they kind of curve down, like, subtly all of a sudden after the flood. And Standing for Truth has argued that this is an evidence for young Earth creation, in that, like, how else would the Genesis writers have known that there would be a genetic bottleneck causing reduced lifespans following the flood when there's only 8 people still alive? I think that's the argument. So I'm just trying to give it context. So Jamie Russell, thanks for that. Does that make sense? I can't tell if you look.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's most of those people never existed. Moses never existed. So when they say that there is a declining curve, it's just because those were the sacred numbers that they picked. It's kind of like how Hinduism guessed the age of the earth was 4.5 billion years old, and they were really close to that. But it was purely based on luck, because that's how their number system worked. Most of those people didn't exist at all, much less have 900 and 700 year lifespans.
You bet. And just making sure I got every question. Thanks so much. We'll jump into. Oh, Ashley DeMarco, another jab in the eye of TJump. She says, need to see papers about me not being rational. So, Thomas, a response?
I have no idea who you are. If it's a pretty simple argument, like, I don't know what happened, therefore I'm not going to make a judgment. That's my position. It's really, really simple.
Gotcha. People. Oh, Thomas. People love needling you tonight. It's just that, you're a lovable guy. So, next up, questions from Karag Nightwolf. Thanks for your question. They said, for Caleb, does God obey the laws of logic and the laws of physics?
He obeys the laws of logic, not because there are things out there that are constraining reality or confining him, but because that's a description of how reality has to be. God has to fit within those laws as well. The laws of physics, God is the creator of. They're contingent. He's not subject to them. And so yeah, he doesn't have to obey the laws of physics.
Gotcha. Thanks so much, Caleb. Pine Creek, thanks for your question. We haven't seen. I was just thinking earlier today. I was like, man, we haven't seen Pine Creek for a while. Did I offend him? Is he triggered? Pine Creek, are you still out there? I'm looking for you in the live chat. He is. He is. Okay, I see you, Pine Creek. Okay,
He just doesn't
well,
want for a debate sometime.
I love Pine Creek. Doug is honestly, he's been good to me. He's never been disrespectful. We've crossed swords a couple of times, and I've enjoyed Doug's company. So we fervently disagree on some things, but hey, true tolerance requires that you disagree. Enough of this. The one thing, if I could show my bias, it's like that whole like, oh no, everybody's right, everybody's got their own truth. Just I don't play that game, Caleb. So next up, sorry about that. Pine Creek, thanks for your question, which is for Caleb. He says, 1, is it reasonable to believe foolish things? If no, is the gospel foolish? And then he says, he quotes 1 Corinthians 1:18, which in ESV is, for the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God.
So it depends upon how you define the word foolish. So if by foolish you mean irrational, no, it's not reasonable to believe irrational things. We should reject it. I take the sense that Paul means in 1 Corinthians by foolish, meaning it's foolish to the world. It's not glamorous. It doesn't appeal. So to them, it seems silly. It takes time to unpack and understand, and that can be reasonable. So it depends upon what sense you mean the word foolish.
Gotcha. Next up, Pants Al Jones, thanks for your question. They asked for TJump. When you say you think it's possible for something to exist and not exist at the same time, you invalidate everything you say. Why not just be honest?
No, it's intuitionistic logic where you can have it on a spectrum where it partially exists and partially does not exist, kind of like Schrodinger's cat in physics. So there isn't a straight dichotomy of does or does not exist, and like there is in standard logic, because there's problems with standard logic. So they came up with other kinds of logic, like intuitionistic logic, where it's on a scale and it can partially exist and partially not exist because of things like quantum logic and Schrodinger's cat. So it's not as simple as that, and it doesn't invalidate anything I said.
Gotcha. Thanks so much. Shad Spark, thanks for your question. For Tom Jump, can you demonstrate that logic is true without first assuming that logic is true?
Truth is a property of sentences. So it's like saying, can I demonstrate English is in proper form, proper grammatical form without assuming English? Well, of course not, because that's what it means. True is not a property of reality. True is a property of sentences.
Gotcha. Let's see here. Sock Account, thanks for your question. This is for both debaters. Sock Account says, is faith in God reasonable? I'm curious to hear their answers. So I suppose we had that asked in one of the super chats. If you want to add anything that you immediately after were like, oh, I wish I would have added this part, you can add that now.
Yeah, I mean, faith in God is reasonable for the reasons I provided in the debate. I mean, there are other reasons out there, of course. I provided what I find to be the most convincing, but, there are other arguments that other people may find convincing as well.
No, it is not reasonable because it can be anything a God can answer can be answered by a non-God. So there's no reason to conclude it's a God, just like there's no reason to conclude there is a leprechaun in the box.
Very interesting. Let me throw this one at you, Tom. So, good old Steve McRae, who's been an extreme help to this channel. I have to be honest, Tom and Steve, you guys have both helped the channel. Steve's helped it big time, and we haven't had him on as much in a long time. But what about this one? I just thought of it. Would you be up for a discussion with Steve on... Tom, I think you take what has been called like strong atheism position of saying there is no God, or at least there's probably no God. How about that?
No,
There's probably no God.
I'm a weak atheist. I don't say there is. There's no reason to believe in a God.
You're okay. So you're actually in the same boat as Steve.
Steve is an agnostic. He doesn't use the term atheist. He
Right.
despises the term, he uses it only in the philosophical sense.
Yeah, Steve says that he doesn't like, he's right, he doesn't like the term atheist for himself. He says they're betas! Okay, so with that, next question, Pants Al Jones, thanks for your questions for TJump. Says, I make a future testable prediction that this debate has a limitation of how long it will last. Oh, therefore it ends. Limitations exist scientifically. Thomas?
Vicky, and I can predict the sun will rise tomorrow, therefore the spaghetti monster exists. Oh God! There we go.
Oh boy. Oh man. I am just having a good time. I am, it's like everybody's asking me if I'm drunk. I'm not drunk. I'm cool. I'm with it. Ask Tom. He's been to my hometown of Oshkosh, Wisconsin. So
You should just see the empty bottles of vodka just lying around everywhere.
it's pretty bad. When we were in Oshkosh, Wisconsin, we went to Planet Fitness because I was like, hey, let's go pump some iron, Tom. Let's get jacked. And he's like, well, I don't really feel comfortable unless it's Planet Fitness. It's a judgment-free zone. And I was like, Tom, are you serious? What? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, fine. So he goes to the gym, he goes on the pre-core for like 15 minutes. He's like, I think I'm good for today. I was like, Tom, no. Okay. So anyway, with that, I may have like reversed everything in that story.
Free Pizza Mondays, greatest gym ever.
This is, Ashley, oh, this is nice. I thought it was going to be a good backhanded compliment. But it was a sincere compliment. Ashley DeMarco, thanks for your sweet words toward Thomas. She says, I do like TJump. I have a lot of respect for him for your information. Wow.
I appreciate the compliment.
At least one person. So, Thomas, my boy, actually, Tom, I just love Tom. And don't worry, Caleb, I love you too. But, anyway, Caleb, I do seriously. I love that you just kind of have this even keelness about you. But it's so fun to tease Tom. So with that, I want to say thanks everybody for being here. It has honestly been a total blast. I was kind of tired before this live stream, but then when you guys saw it, like, I was like starting to hulk up Caleb and Tom, like before we went live. I was like, oh, I'm excited. So want to say thanks everybody for being here. And with that, let me make sure I caught everything. Keep sifting through the reasonable from the unreasonable, everybody. Oh, wait, Mordek. So sorry. Forgive me. They didn't get any of their questions in. They had asked for TJump. Mordek 101. Thanks for your question. Sorry, I missed it. They said, it seems like your position leads to modal collapse, which is widely seen as extremely implausible if you define necessary in a way indistinguishable from contingency.
So modal collapse is usually an argument used against the ontological argument that says that if God is necessary, then the way everything about reality, every proposition is necessary. But that doesn't apply to my position because I really don't care whether or not reality is necessary or random. Like, for example, there could be reality could just be random, like randomly generated. That'd be fine for me. Like my worldview doesn't make a difference one way or the other. So I don't see how my worldview would lead to modal collapse. I mean, it could if I was just making like a hypothetical argument to do that. But my specific worldview makes no statements whatsoever about the way reality is in that way, in that sense.
Gotcha. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for being here. Totally a pleasure. Thanks, everybody in the audience, for your questions. Honestly, I just love. Thanks for coming out and hanging out with us. It's been a good time. We do have another debate this Wednesday. Brand new speaker, Ben Fisher, will be on, and that's going to be against Nicholas is coming back. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Nicholas Lamar Suter, pleasure, a scholar and a gentleman. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Frustrated Atheist said he's a strong atheist. You need him on. We would love to have a strong atheist on. Put Steve McRae in his place. With that, thanks for stopping by, everybody. Love you, Steve. Keep sifting out the reasonable from the unreasonable. Take care, everybody.